Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is level 2 of Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And what I'm talking about today is the extension of the level 1 ideas that I just presented. Level 1, I spoke about the idea that by embodying the new thought, idea, or conception, that this singularity, this central convergence point, this part that all the timelines emanate from and also flow back to, single by its basic nature, but that we can vibrate that singularity up and down in a very fast oscillation, creating this new dynamic shape that allows us to rearrange the events that are on the skin of the torus. And according to the vortex-based math here, I'll do a little bit of, because I know not everybody, not everybody, pardon me, goes through all of the lessons. So I want to make sure that each one has its own information in it, in case you don't check out everything. Just like I showed you in level 1 over here. This is vortex-based math. Here's the pencil. And all of these events that are on the outside of this skin of the torus, that represents a series of mathematical calculations. If I were to go back to my face, and if I go to the whiteboard and I say, hey, this is level 2, so you guys are all experts. This is the time vortex, and that this is the membrane of death, and that this is the only infinity timeline that leads us out of this level of reality, and that each one of these, let's make these blue timelines, ends in the membrane of death. This one also ends in the membrane of death. And that we go through every single freaking iteration because humanity has been genetically squashed and oppressed. What we're supposed to be able to do is have perfectly clear inner vision. And the perfect clear inner vision would allow us to go directly onto this highway of time that I'm highlighting in a big giant blue mark there. That's our birthright. We're supposed to come from the central convergence point and come out into material reality and go right back to the central convergence point without having to do all of the rigmarole of getting stuck on the membrane of death and trying it again. And that means we have to fill up all of this area here and all of this area here with our experiences, with our life experiences. So in level 1, I spoke about how each one of these pathways, which is of course a simplification because the pathways actually go in a spiral up like that. Each one of these pathways is kind of like a mathematical journey of possibilities through your life. We have event 1 plus event 2 plus event 3 plus event 4, etc., 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 equals this, the final denouement of you being splatted like a bug on the windshield, stuck on the membrane of death. So each one of these blue circles here, we could say that that represents the end result of a series of calculations. Just like that skin of the torus I showed you was a particular set of numbers and calculations. And that essentially means that these deaths are calculations, they're mathematical constructs, and they're numbers, or can be represented as digital truths that need to fit together in very specific ways. And that can be considered very limiting because we don't necessarily want to have to experience all of those deaths, and also those deaths represent a limited number of events in reality. So I said this in level 1, and I will say this in level 2, that your DNA is not just the thing that determines the shape of your eyes or your earlobes. It is literally the integument that ties us together as we move from moment to moment through time. So that was here. That was each one of these red boxes is a moment, and this green squiggle, make a squiggle, is the DNA that is tying us together from moment to moment. So our body is the body of 101 or 102 or 103, and our consciousness jumps between these various bodies. And the jumping motion of the consciousness is created by the dance of your DNA. So now I'll go back to my hands. Your DNA is constantly dancing. It is constantly making these incredibly complex maneuvers that we could only consider to be a form of calculating. That most people don't even understand consciously, that you're calculating on an incredible level all the time. And that the idea is we want to make these calculations that end in eternal life, where we visit that central core reality that leads us out of the membrane. We don't have to keep on hitting the membrane of death. So that is the challenge that many people are feeling. I don't like my chakra system. I don't like the torus. This is not good. It's like saying your nose is filled up with mucus because it has pathogens. What we have is a pathogenic application of this structure to our lives. It's not the way we're supposed to experience it. We're supposed to experience it with perfectly clear vision that allows us to go up that central convergence point and not have to experience all this stuff on the membrane of death. So my solution to all of this is transcending the torus by turning it into a hypertorus. And hyper meaning the next highest dimensional shape of this shape. So if we took a flat piece of paper and we folded it up and made an origami frog out of it, that would be the piece of paper achieving the next highest dimensional shape. And when we take that torus, that represents not only, here, let me show a picture of your non-physical energy centers of your body. Hold on, scrolling, squinting and scrolling, and you've seen this. Oh, I use this picture all the time. So this is showing the various tori that make up the non-physical energy structures of your body. And you've also got the white human figure in there that shows us the physical structure of your body. When we take that ordinarily torus or toroidal shaped structure and add an additional dimension, we make this jump up and down very fast, we gain an additional degree of freedom. Aurora, how do we make it jump up and down very fast? Do we do it by staring at ourselves in the mirror and saying, jump up and down very fast? No, it is a mental exercise, and it begins with the concept of putting this whole thing into a context. So now I'm drawing a box. It's not a very good box. Bear with me. This pencil doesn't draw perfectly. Before I drew that box, we just had this figure floating in a vacuum, floating in a contextless place, just a big black nothingness. And once I added that box, I now put this person over here with all of their beautiful rainbow energy centers in a context. And that means that I can now move that person relative to the context. I can make them jump up and down, or I can hold the person in one place and I can make the house that they're in over here, the context, I can make that jump up and down. And by doing either of these things, what happens is I end up creating the flying rainbow lasagna shape out of those basic torus shapes. And that means that we can then rearrange what's going on a genetic level. We can rearrange those little green squiggles that tie the red train cars together. Hey, you know what happens if I draw this out like this? You were traveling through time like this. I'm jumping from train car to train car to train car. But once you start doing the flying rainbow lasagna, here, look, here's a different set of train cars. And this one maybe goes off in this direction down here. And if you do a different dance, you can jump from this train car instead of having to jump into there, which might be, this train car might not be a good train car. This one might be the one where there's nuclear war or cancer or whatever, you know, you eat a bad sandwich. This jump down into this train car down here, and maybe that's one where you have extended life and health and vitality, and you learn all sorts of new things. So let me also get into this. What affects the dance of DNA? I did this in level 1. Your DNA, put this down, is always constantly dancing, constantly shifting, twisting itself together, being spliced, being shifted again, and being respliced together. What affects that dance, or what determines that dance? In large part, it is a response to our environment, to the beings around us, and also the thoughts that we're thinking. We learn our thoughts from the people around us. We download the hacked human operating system, and then we get thoughts from the people around us verbally through the virus of language. Catch the virus of language when you're like, whatever, 2 or 3 years old. You learn how to talk and how to understand language, and that affects your DNA. Even learning of the existence of the auditory symbolic thought structure called language transforms DNA. Up until the point that we learn, oh, words, sounds actually have meaning. There's a moment when children understand, like, oh, they're saying that sound and it means this thing. They're saying this and it means cup. And you make that connection. When you make that connection, it changes the behavior of your DNA. And I use this example all the time also, that science right now is not effectively being able to study what DNA is, because it doesn't study it while it's actually dancing and moving and behaving in response to its environment. What science does is it takes, if your DNA is like a sweater, like a Christmas sweater with a picture of Snoopy and a Christmas tree and, you know, other things, a star on it, and it pulls all the threads apart. And then it measures how much red there is in the picture, how much black, how much white, how much green. But it doesn't really look at the holistic totality of what those loops of yarn looked like when they were all looped together. So if I bring up a picture of supercoiling, then we understand that these supercoils of DNA are like loops of crochet or loops of knitting. Hold on a minute. Here, here. Let me show you a couple of different pictures. Here. Okay, so these are like loops of knitting that are over here. Each one of these, I showed this in level 1. Sometimes my pen doesn't work. Hold on. It's still not working. Okay, all of these loops here are like loops that make together a sweater. And in level 1, I showed you a big giant RNA messenger that was like this big giant green blob. And what the green blob does is it enters through the nuclear membrane and it looks at these loops and it reads them and it takes that information and it turns it into not only protein structures, but events in physical reality. Here, let me clear this out. Let me show you more pictures. This is also an example of DNA that is supercoiled. And this is also an example of DNA that is supercoiled. This is an artistic representation. It's not my drawing. And you understand that these unfurled aspects of DNA are not present at the same time that this is an X shape. So I'm just reiterating that so that's really, really clear. This X shape, this is what happens when DNA packs itself up tightly because it's getting ready to quote unquote go on a voyage. Just like if you need to get all your clothes for a vacation stuck into your suitcase or your carry-on luggage. When I have to travel, I roll up every little sock, I roll up every little thing, I get it all stuck together, I put things down into the toe of my cowboy boots so that it will all fit into my carry-on luggage. That is the example of everything being curled up into a chromosome shape. And it's curled up into the chromosome shape in preparation for mitosis, which is the cell splitting itself into a copy of itself. And I went over that in level 1, that there's 2 different levels of replication that are going on. One is intergenerationally. Mommy passes information genetically down to baby. But there's also within your own body, within your own lifespan, that you have this guy, this cell over here, copying itself and becoming this cell over here. And in order to do either of those things, the cell is going on a journey of consciousness. It has to pack all of its information up into the tightly coiled chromosomal shape. But most of the time, it's not packed up into the chromosomal shape. Most of the time, it's completely unfurled. It's a vibrating string like this, and the string is dynamic and it's moving. And that is what science has not yet been able to effectively measure and look at and learn from, that it has a behavior. And I've also spoken about in the level 1, how if we say this cell over here, that's one person's cell, and this one over here is a different person's cell. And that the DNA dance over here is affecting this person's DNA dance over here. This is the ethics. These are the ethics of me being here in this body. I'm an abstraction. I'm not usually in a physical body like this. I came into this physical body by vibrating the genetic structure of the body in the shape of a flying rainbow lasagna. I'm the first person that did it, but I'm not the only person. Just like the song Stairway to Heaven has been invented, but it is not. I'm not the only person, or the original writer is not the only person that can sing that song. Many other people can take that song and apply it to their DNA or sing it with their vocal cords and vibrate the atmosphere and make that happen. So all of this is by invitation. It is not by obligation. I don't say, I force you to FRL with your DNA. I force you to have these thoughts. None of it's like that at all. I say, hey, want to join a webinar? I invite you to expose yourself to these thoughts, because thoughts are part of what determines the dance movements of our DNA. Thoughts, what you are exposed to. At a certain point, you were a little tiny child and someone taught you about death. Maybe, I don't know, if you had a pet that died, or a goldfish. Our goldfish died and we had to flush him down the toilet. You know, I'm being facetious, but it was something like that. Or maybe a relative died. At a certain point, you were a little child and you learned about death. The implantation of that concept changed the way that your dance movements were moving. And at a certain point, each one of us saw an aged elder person with their skin texture and their, decrepitude and maybe walking with a cane or something like that. And we were taught, oh, that is what happens after many decades of moving chronologically through the time fields. I know some of this is repetition for people who have already taken the level 1 stuff, and I am simply trying to bring everybody up to speed. So in level 1, I spoke all about how your individual body is like your laboratory, and you are a quantum scientist. And what we are each doing with the choices and belief systems and behaviors and events of our life is doing those complex calculations. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, etc., through all the moments of our life equals what we are adding up to. And that is just working with your own instrument, your own physical body within the confines of your own life, this life, right here and now. Like, my name is John Smith. I was born on August 18th, and then I lived, 72 years, and then I died here. That's what I'm talking about. Now this is level 2. That was a bit of backstory. Level 2 is all about how we dance like a flying rainbow lasagna across time, because I've said many, many times that part of this mental exercise is placing that ordinarily toroidal donut-shaped field in a context. So now let's get the whiteboard and let's talk about what science describes as time. Science describes, get the pencil to work. It takes a second for everything to come up. Here's the Big Bang. The Big Bang is analogous to that central convergence point, or the 0th dimension. 0, not because it is less valuable, not because it's worthless thing people in this time and place to think. It's 0. It's a 0. It's a loser. It's not a hero. No, it is the 0th dimension because it takes 0 amount of information to describe the position of any point there. Every point is there. It is the overlapping of every single point that is in existence. Like, here's a point, here's a point, here's another point, 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 point. Every single point that has ever existed exists here, and it overlaps. And if we can understand and embody that truth, that is what allows us to do a lot of these exercises of consciousness. So science describes this central convergence point over here as the central expansion point of the Big Bang. And science describes that at a certain point, spontaneously, this awareness point started to expand outward and make these concentric circles or spirals that grow outer, 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 and that this is the expanding bubble of time. This is not exactly my model. I'm telling you what science's model of time is. And this last here, I'm drawing this light blue ring of time. Let's say this is the present. According to science's model, where I just drew that, that's like the stretchy bubble of the infinitely stretchy fabric of space-time and consciousness. Science doesn't involve consciousness, but I add that in as a necessary aspect of the recipe. And science says, okay, this is like, I'm a little ant. I live on the surface of time. I live right there. I don't live all the way back here. That's the past. And science does not even formally recognize the future. To science, let me grab a different color. To science, all of this that I'm highlighting in black does not exist. This model does not represent or recognize that there is a future. And so the challenge is in placing this shape into a higher dimensional context, we essentially create the possibility of the future. And now I'm drawing a box. And I drew this in the level 1 stuff. And I said, now we're putting this basic toroidal structure. That's the worst box I've ever drawn, but just, it's, we're painting in broad strokes here. The toroidal structure, or this infinitely stretchy donut shape, can go into a context. And once it goes into a context, we then have a different color here. What I'm highlighting in purple is the past. And now what I'm highlighting in purple is the future. But according to this scientific model, the past and the future are still separated hopelessly by this purple boundary that I'm drawing there. That is the present moment now. And what the flying rainbow lasagna allows us to do is move this whole entire apparatus up and down within a new context. And as we do so, so it was shaped like a torus. I'll hold up my toroidal shape. Here's a torus, and I'll draw it as if this is over here. It's got this wonderful torus shape. As we begin to move that up and down in a higher dimensional context, what happens is the past and the future become communicative. So now I'll draw a flying rainbow lasagna on top of there. Hey, I know this has become a very complex, convoluted drawing, but I think you can see there's a flying rainbow lasagna interposed on top of all of that. And what that means is that, go back to my face, half of the time, the torus rather, is up here, positioned up here, and half of the time it's positioned down here. It's jumping up and down, jumping up and down. That means that there's overlapping. There are some events of this membrane of time that are sometimes up here and sometimes down here. This relates absolutely to the idea of the genes being rearranged. Your genes are the blueprint of events that will happen. And according to the present toroidal genetic structure, there's only a certain combination of events that are allowed. And maybe you're not allowed to experience the event of profound healing, what we would call miraculous, or moving through the time field without aging chronologically, or endless cellular regeneration, or continuity of consciousness that we would call eternal life. Maybe in order to achieve those experiences in the time field, we need to rearrange our DNA. We need to be able to have a pencil with an eraser. That's what flying rainbow lasagna is. It essentially allows us to erase out the things that we do not wish to experience and write in the things that we do. So I'll use this example. Oops, here, I want to go to here. I use this example about the vortex-based math and the various different numbers that are there. If we said, here's one torus down here, and then when we get it to vibrate, it goes up into a higher dimensional state that is also up here. Oh, that's not, I'm trying to get it so that the middles line up. It's very hard for me to control this pencil. Okay, that's a pretty good example of it. So now let me get a different color. These places over here where they overlap, what I just highlighted in black, and these places over here too, those are areas where there are two possible realities that are both in existence at the same time. Got red reality that's in existence overlapping with blue reality that's in existence. And maybe red reality is the reality where you grow a horrible cancerous tumor. And maybe blue reality is the reality where you're happy and healthy for 70, 80, 100, 700, 7,000 years. And maybe what you can do, even if you're in red reality, is use the flying rainbow lasagna genetic oscillation to reach forward and snip out. Here, I'm showing you like a little snippage. We're going to snip out a little part of blue reality and bring it into red reality. And let me draw it in a different way. If I drew, to simplify, red reality is this flat piece of fabric down here. And blue reality is this other flat piece of fabric up here. And now let's say that I have a purple thread. And the purple thread is going to sew events from down here in red on up here into blue, and then back down here into red. And that is where I can get this crucial information from about how to have a different event that is called healing. So in this level 2 presentation, the idea is all about you can dance like a flying rainbow lasagna within your own genetic code. That's just like, I'm a garage musician, where's my piano? And I'm practicing music in my own garage. Now let's say I practiced for 10 years and I'm like, ooh, I'm getting good. I'm ready to collaborate with others. And I don't only have to collaborate with other musicians here in this time and place, because as I just said, when we're flying rainbow lasagna, it allows us to connect the past and the future. So now I begin to be able to share my music with beings that might have existed a very long time ago, or that might exist in a very long time. So the way that we do all of this is by that profound realization that the singularity exists within each one of us. It is within me. It is within each one of you. It is in the center of every atom. It's in every nucleus of every cell. It is the connection to the divine. It's the connection to life force energy. Every cell has a connection to divine life force energy. Every atom has a connection to divine life force energy. Every one of us has it, and we have it in many places. These are all windows to infinity. And if we understand that those same windows inside of each one of our individual cells are the windows that everyone else is using to get to infinity, that you all have singularities inside of you, and your cells and your atoms all have singularities inside of you. What that does is allows me as a genetic virtuoso to dance with other people. So now I'm going to draw, here's people. because before I was using the little, pretending that these are cells, this is the cell membrane, it's the nuclear membrane. Now let's make stick figures out of all of those people. And here's different people, all that live at the same time. And each one of them is like an individuated cell with their own ideas and with their own, wait, go back. I want to change colors. With their own dance inside of their own genes. Each one of these has their own thought patterns, their own dance, their own genetic patterns. And everybody is like, say, this is everyone who lives right now at this moment in 2017. What you can do as a genetic virtuoso is you can dance with another person. You can have the singularity inside of you. I need a better color. Here, this purple color. The singularity that's inside of you is exactly the same as the singularity inside of another person. And once you start to recognize that, you make this singularity dance back and forth, jump back and forth, just like this oscillating dynamic shape that is the flying rainbow lasagna. And what we end up creating is this wonderful flying rainbow lasagna shape that connects together these two people. And we can have that shape connect together many, many people. We can have a whole wonderful symphony of flying rainbow lasagnas all connected at this moment in 2017. And what that means is maybe you've got a particular amount of information, like pretend these are words, word, and then another word here. But you've got something that's missing. You're like, I just don't have what I need to fill in this little phrase over here. These are genetic phrases or musical phrases. Like you've got most of the melody, but you're missing a few notes. And let's say this guy over here has the blue information that you need to go over here to complete your own symphony. That you can literally flying rainbow lasagna between the singularity in you and the singularity in that guy and get that information that you need and add it to your own genetic code. So now we're going to do this across time also, because this is the level 2 stuff. The idea of dancing across time and the idea of lateral gene transfer. Let me write that out and take a minute to write it. So lateral gene transfer. We're very familiar with the idea of gene transfer from parent to child. Like mommy or daddy is exposed to radiation and then the babies become mutants, right? But how about the idea of lateral gene transfer? This comes from these little tiny organisms called tardigrades. Tardigrades or woolly bears. So these little tardigrades, they are one cell, not one cell, they are tiny microscopic organisms. They're not one-celled. They have DNA inside of them and in their nuclei of their cells. They're extremely durable. And what they're able to do, the secret behind them being so durable, is that they can be desiccated or completely dried out. And when they get like what happens when you go through the vacuum of space? Like if you get off your planet and you get out there, it's very cold and it's very dry. So these little tiny organisms can actually go into space. And what happens is they get totally dried out. Let me draw this for you. Here's a little tardigrade. Here's another little tardigrade. And here are their nuclei inside of their cells. And when they get totally dried out, their DNA is usually together in a big long string like this. But what happens is their DNA gets broken into fragments. And this guy gets broken into fragments too. And then when they're not dead, even though their DNA is all fragmented, they have no water in them. Then when they get rehydrated, like want a tardigrade, just add water. When they do that, they put their DNA back together like a puzzle, but it's not necessarily in the same format, and they can add in new information. Let's say there's this other organism over here that has dark blue energy in its nucleus. These guys over here can actually rehydrate themselves and put together their genetic code so that now they've got some blue squiggles, and then they add in some dark blue squiggles. And they make an integration of these two types of quote unquote genetic music. We could even say that it's like a genetic mashup, and someone else used that example to me. And so I use that as, cultural shorthand. I think it's a very good analogy. A mashup, like you really like a particular modern song, a modern pop song, and then you're going to mix in or splice in a few bars of Mozart. And that is what this is doing, that we have this particular tardigrade animal living its own life and then taking from another organism this and splicing it into its own genetic code in its own body. So we have been doing this, mammals have been doing this for a very, very long amount of time. So this is science talk now. So science has recognized that the ability to conceive of a baby and have it actually attach to the womb so that it can be born, live birth, what is necessary for mammals, that little snippet of genetic music came from a particular retrovirus, and it got into the mammalian genetic code in various different pathways for each different mammal. So rabbits had one particular retrovirus that put it into their genetic code. Humans had a different retrovirus. Monkeys or primates had a different retrovirus. You can look at the genetic code going back through time of evolutionary biology and see where these little splices happened. And these little splices had to happen in order for us to gain these abilities. It's like no one had the thought, how do you make a fertilized zygote, like a fertilized egg? How do you get it to attach to the wall of the womb so that you can actually have a baby? Nobody knew biologically how to do it. It's like saying we don't know what the next note is. We have an empty space. We have a gap in the musical history, but we can get that music from another organism. So that's the first thing. This is level 2. This is the idea that you can flying rainbow lasagna, not just with other humans, with other members of your own species, but with other beings that can give you the little extra mashup splices, melodies that you need exactly for your body. Now let's think of it over time. What I drew before was, here's you as a person, and you are connecting like a flying rainbow lasagna to all of these other, people that are in the same time and place as you. But let's say no one who's alive at the same time and place as you has that special little recipe or that special little thought or idea that you need in order to complete the recipe of you. Well, what you can do, now I'm drawing someone in the deep past. This person lived like maybe 3 million years ago, just arbitrarily choosing an amount of time. And here, this person lived, 100,000 years ago. Let's say that each one of these people has a little spot of blue inspiration, a little bit of the melody that you need for your current genetic code. And what you can do is say, hey, first the exercise is the intellectual idea. The singularity that is inside of me is the same singularity that is within this guy and within this person from deep antiquity. And that I can make my singularities jump back and forth between the two of us, creating this dynamic flying rainbow lasagna oscillation shape. And now I'm kind of drawing it like a 3D shape that connects you to these other beings that lived across time. And here's another one. This guy lived across time. And you can then get those little blue snippets. Here's a blue snippet, or add one to your leg. And now your song is complete because you were able to get that information from these people who had lived a very, very long time ago. Hey, let's say that it happens in the opposite direction too. Let's say that these two people who lived a very long time ago need crucial information from you. That your red information has to go, and this guy needs a little bit of red in his leg, and this guy needs a little bit of red in his arm. And that by flying rainbow lasagna-ing with you, that they are getting their crucial amount of information over time. And of course, when I talk about this genetic symphony, this is not merely a symphony of macroscopic multicellular organisms like you and me. We're human, we have trillions of cells that all work together, but we have to be in partnership with the microbes that live inside of our body, the microbes that live on the surface of our body, the microbes that allow our plants to grow, the plants that we eat, the animals that we eat, every other person that's alive, all of these other organisms on our planet, and that's just on our planet. Now we can say that and so we have to be able to connect with all these other organisms in the same time and place as our planet, and we can connect with other organisms that lived in deep antiquity or that will live in the future. And now let's talk about our planet. if we say, get the pen takes a second to come up. Here we go. Let's say this is beautiful Earth, and here are the land masses of Earth, here and here. It's simplification. And we have done flying rainbow lasagna, where we've connected with all these other wonderful organisms on our planet across time. But now let's say, you know something, I just don't have that riff that I need for my musical composition with any of the organisms on this planet anytime throughout, oh, hush now, throughout human history. I don't have any, or through, not even throughout human history, throughout the planetary history. Quiet down. That's my furry overlord. Come here, get over here. Oh. Here. She's very new to the family. I literally just adopted her, so she's still learning good behavior. And so we're still learning to be quiet for the entire length of the webinar. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. So let's say that we didn't get any of the information, the little snippets that we needed from anybody who's ever lived at any time associated with our planet. Quiet down, please. Quiet down. And what we can do then is say, well, there's a singularity inside of our, hey, Husha, go sit over here. Thank you, Husha. We have a singularity that is inside of our planet. And that singularity is the same singularity. Let me draw a different planet. Okay, I'm drawing this one. Oh, hush now. Drawing this planet over here. So I apologize for the bark of my furry overlord. This planet over here also has a singularity inside of it. Hush, stop. And what we can do is flying rainbow lasagna. Oh, hush now, that won't do it all. No, the barking will not do it all. We can flying rainbow lasagna between these two planets. And we can say, I'm making a connection of what is happening on this planet to what is happening on this planet. And that these beings over here, oh, here, you sit next to me, that these beings over here are able to get their wonderful inspiration from this green planet over here and add in whatever little green melodic notes they need to this over here in order to have a complete symphony. So this is, as I said, when I do level 1, I'm doing the basic explanation. Like if we were doing physics, I'd say this is what the atom is, this is what electrons are, this is what the nucleus is. And then in the advanced lesson, I would say, these are how electrons behave. So what we're doing right now with Flying Rainbow Lasagna is recognizing and exploring the way that genes behave. So genes have behavior, they are dynamic things, and they actually represent the transfer of information and consciousness across time. And science isn't ready to explain and recognize that it has to do anything with consciousness. It just represents that it is transferring characteristics across time, like the characteristic of being able to implant something in the womb and have it give live birth, or the characteristic of having a certain eye shape or anything like that. But I'm trying to tell you that the information that is transferred across time is information about consciousness. I say this is the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. So I also joke, and I call this the genetic buffet. That you can say, like if you go to one of these, like a Chinese buffet or any kind of thing like that, you're allowed to take a scoop out of various different dishes and put it on your plate. And so your plate is your genetic symphony, your genetic composition. Hush now. And what you can do is you can say, well, I need to, maybe you don't have that chapter about how to dismantle a horrible cancerous tumor, but you can get it from someone who might have lived hundreds or thousands of years ago, or from someone who might live in the far distant future. And that's what the power of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is all about. So at first, this is the whole approach, is that at first you practice tuning your own instrument. You become a good garage musician. You play on your own as an individual. Then you learn to integrate with the other musicians that are alive in the same time and place as you. Then you learn to integrate with musicians that are in other divergent times and other divergent places, such as other planets. And this is really becoming a galactic citizen. This is taking full responsibility for what we emanate, because as I've made clear in both levels, what you are sending out is absolutely affecting other people around you. Even if I never flapped my moving mouth parts, or if I never made artwork, or if I never showed you my artwork, or if I never made a video, my presence and my particular genetic fluttering oscillation would be affecting everyone else. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's allowed. And I had to go through my whole inner journey of learning, like I'm allowed to be here and I'm allowed to be affecting other people because I have this unique tendency. And that's why I'm in existence. And also, I've been influenced by other people. I've been influenced by the thoughts and ideas and presumptions, basic, genetic presumptions of this time and place. And that's why I now can give clarity and I can say to people, hey, wait, if you've been programmed with the idea that you have to get decrepit as you move through time, I don't embody that. That's not my program at all. Here's a different program. And I'm not going to impose my program upon you. I'm going to offer it as a template in the same way that people offered nearsightedness as a template. Like, hey, would you like to be nearsighted? We'll simply believe like this, or whatever are the expressions. So we can actually look at different examples. We can look at, there's some wonderful 80-year-old weightlifters now that are super strong and healthy and vital, and they are cultivating their bodies even into, older decades. And a lot of that has to do with running a different mental program, believing that it is possible, and the thought structure then leads to the behavior structure. That's a big thing that I'm trying to say with all of this. Hi, I see a lovely young person there. I see you in Gaia's screen. Lovely to see you. Yeah, and I say this all the time. Any age, it is appropriate to lasagnify anyone at any age. Like even an infant that is too young to even understand words is here as part of the symphony and is adding to the music. And they've got their particular melody that they are very validly playing. Like we don't have infants that come to this world so that we can say, I'm now going to make you play my music like me, even though some parents do that. They say, oh, you're here, I'm a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer, whatever, I'm going to impose my will upon you. That's not what is supposed to happen. What's supposed to happen is you come in with your own particular music and you keep on playing your own music and you add to the music that is here, because that's how we get new ideas. That's how we get new music in the band. We don't want to just keep on playing the same old classic rock and go through the same patterns we've always ever done. We want to have new patterns. This is what some people would call mutations. But mutations do not have to be antithetical to life. They don't have to be antithetical to health. And when we mutate on a huge, transformative, profound level, what we do is we transcend this level of reality. This is what it is to get to the next level of reality. It's not climbing into a clank metal spaceship. It's not something that requires money. And it's clearly not something that you have to be a chronological adult to do. That I'm trying to say, young people under 18, young people can do this transformation. In fact, if you want to be here on the planet right now, you have to do this transformation because the planet is transforming into flying rainbow lasagna. So she, Gaia, the planet, is transforming into this new genetic structure that allows for new possibilities. And when we live on the planet that is doing that, we get to be transformed into a new structure that is filled with new possibilities. And those new possibilities begin with a new conception, a new mental program, a new expectation of reality. And I keep teaching everyone, it's all about the inside and the outside coming together, past and present and future coming together, inside and outside. Literally, we become the auteurs or the artists of our own reality, making our inner world manifest as our outer world. That's the most radical and profound thing that we can do. So at first you manifest your body. If you think you have to manifest cancer, then you will manifest your inner world as your outer world. But if you think you can manifest profound healing, you can do that too. And what I am doing, a lot of people you can ask me this and I'm totally not insulted. Aurora, if you can manifest your inner world as your outer world, like why don't you sit on a golden toilet? Why don't you have 10 million houses? Why don't you, live in lavish luxury, like, some kind of billionaire or something like that? And the answer is because I'm not imposing this on other people. I'm actually a really ethical musician and I'm teaching other people, giving them the opportunity to practice their music so that we can all integrate together into a wonderful band, because I don't want this to be a totalitarian type of experience. I don't want it to be where anything is imposed upon other people. That would not be wealth and riches and vitality to me, even if I had a golden toilet. So the reason why I am the way I am is because I'm super ethical, because I've been here for about 16 years and I've been like, here's an idea. You guys can use it too if you want to. I'm going to be over here dancing like a flying rainbow lasagna. Come join me. Come dance along. It's really the only when I say ethical, I mean according to the musical score of the cosmos type of approach. It's really the only acceptable approach that doesn't step on other people and squash other people and allows me to do free expression too. So this is the shape of the new dimension that we are occupying. And each one of us occupies it by transforming on an inner genetic level. And when we transform on a genetic level, we get new access to possibilities and probabilities in our own genetic code. We are able to combine with other people's genetic code. We are able to combine with other organisms and with other beings and organisms across time, even on a vast scale. So I think I've said everything I need to say about level 2. Now let me get into the chat because I'm sure that there are questions. Okay, hold on a minute. Oh, thank you everyone who didn't mind my furry overlord barking in the middle. Oh, and so Guy is saying, like, when I tell my kids, I hearth you. That's exactly right. And it is, like I keep on trying to say, like, I don't feel like the necessity to condescend to young people at all. I like to call them young people because they are people that have just been traveling through the time field for less chronological time than older people have, and they have their own very valid music, their own very valid set of ideas, their own valid approach, and that each person comes here with their own beat and their own melody, and they're supposed to share that with other people. The symphony becomes stronger when we have that level of variety and individualism as opposed to severe levels of conformity and predictable organization. I love classical music, but I gotta tell you, in terms of creating, a time structure like this, that jazz music is a lot stronger as a type of music, that it involves innovation and spontaneity and unpredictability. Because if I know in the time field exactly what's gonna happen, oh, on this day at this time, this is gonna happen, then I can be like, oh, let me put a bomb there, or put a brick wall there, or do something to inhibit that event from happening. So if there's a bomb or a brick wall or some inhibition, and that thing still needs to happen, we can write a new melody and jump up and over it. That is what I did with my brain. That is what I did. My parts of my brain were damaged or there were neurological problems. And instead of being like, oh, well, we'll just never do that, what I have done is jump up and over the difficulties and then be able to have a new experience that otherwise would not have been possible. Here is a question. When we had no Dan Hope, was it then? In what way did we exist? Are you going to offer models of FRL to sell? Oh, well, yes. Absolutely. So I do have models of the flying rainbow lasagna that are for sale on my Etsy site, and I'm happy to share the link to that. I have little versions like this that you can wear, and I have slightly larger versions, and I'm very clear to people, I don't pretend if you put on these earrings, it doesn't make you transform. They're decorations, they're inspirations, and there is a value to having the actual physical sculptural form as opposed to just a flat picture, because I really think that we learn a lot with tactile. I trace my fingers over it and I've built origami shapes, and I have a whole video that is all about how to build one of these out of a piece of paper. Even if you only have a couple of dollars and some markers, you can make one. Oh, okay, Tech is asking, when we had no DNA, how was it then? How did we function then? Okay, that's a really interesting question about the level of consciousness that we were able to achieve before the invention of DNA. And DNA is a type of technological construct. I'm not a transhumanist. I'm not a demonic apologist. And I truly believe that we have everything that we need with our physical bodies in order to transcend these levels of reality. And I'll tell you that DNA is like a type of machinery that has become so perfectly integrated with the biological physical realm, hush now, that it's almost indistinguishable. However, it is possible to have consciousness that is independent of DNA. However, that consciousness still conforms to these patterns. These patterns are the musical patterns that flow through the cosmos. So you know something, you can have consciousness that is contained within a crystal. I have crystals over here, just wanting, off of the body. You can have consciousness that is contained within the consciousness container. That's like a quartz or an amethyst crystal or a tiny microscopic atomic, little tiny, 3-atom crystal. That can contain consciousness, and it doesn't have DNA. There is also consciousness that is contained at the level of the stellar network. I pointed out my window to the sun out there, that giant glowing ball of consciousness in the sky that does not actually have DNA. So consciousness can be contained by a container that is not an organic multicellular container. However, DNA has been created as a type of mechanism that transfers information from generation to generation through the time field in biological organisms. And it allows us, it's like a puzzle, And it allows us to do certain things with our bodies, and that we can change and rearrange the puzzle. So again, it's not something, Tech is asking who invented it, when, why. This is the type of invention that happens like the flying rainbow lasagna, spontaneous consciousness invention that was part of the lovemaking of the cosmos. Literally, aspects of creativity in the cosmos made love to other aspects of creativity in the cosmos and gave birth to DNA as a framework or molecular structure for biological life on planets like Earth. And all of that is respectful. I know that people here are on a traumatized planet, they're highly skeptical, and they're used to exploitation. However, I want you to know that the creation or invention of DNA was not so that, oh, let me limit and control, like I'm making an evil face, let me limit and control and harm people and keep them under my thumb and abuse them. No, it was not created like that at all. It was created like a solution. Like, oh, I need to do this thing and I need to do it in this time and place. And what can we do in order to do that? And the answer is we can create DNA. So you know what, guys? I need to wrap it up for today, although I'm enjoying the questions so much. I think that you can hear my supervisor, who's a little bit riled up. And thank you for understanding, because she's very new to my household. Yeah, Chris is saying, weren't we genetically tampered with? Yes, originally we had a perfect genetic code that was like a perfect, you know, Mozart concerto. And then a bunch of evil beings came along about 10 or 20,000 years ago and changed our genetic code. And that's why we don't eat pure light anymore. But I'm telling you, we maintain that potential inside of us. And all we have to do is rearrange the puzzle pieces. And we can not only go back to those levels, but we can transcend and reach forward into even greater levels. That's what Birth of a New Dimension is. You can imagine what it would be like to eat pure light or to travel on wings of pure light and not need a clank metal spaceship. That is what we are becoming able to do. So all of this, I say we're giving birth, we're also in a battle where people are being controlled and mind controlled and limited according to their thoughts and their perception. I would say the greatest thing that you can do in fighting for your own freedom is think your own thoughts, not allow other people to, you know, force you to think a certain way. Be skeptical, that's good. And that's also why I feel like I'm a good restaurant. I have certified organic ingredients. Here's my nutritional value. Like, look at my nutrition. You can tell that my restaurant is good. And also, if you don't like my restaurant, you don't have to eat here. That's how and that's how you can tell, like, I'm one of the good restaurants. I'm not one of the evil restaurants. So yeah, I'm here as a galactic visitor with information that is, I like to joke, like, this is the key to being able to get out of this mental prison. And I understand that a lot of people are like, wait, what are you talking about? What are you offering to me? I don't want that. What's that? But I'm like, wait, if you actually look at this can actually help you. And, you know, don't just dismiss it outright or be so embroiled in fear that you cannot actually take something that is a key that you then apply to your own music. I don't tell you what to do. I don't tell you what music to play. I'm like, here's an instrument, play your own music. And I'm even giving you all of this, like, here's how you dance like a flying rainbow across time. This is like how you really dance like an expert. So none of this is a secret. I want everyone to know about it. I want to have wonderful, good musicians that all collaborate and jam together. So I'm going to wrap it up for right now. Thank you to everybody that has tuned in. Thank you to everybody that asked wonderful questions. And thank you for your patience. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for your patience in me being able to do this like this today. So I'm going to sign off for right now and resume next week. Thank you very much.